المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Alhamdulillah, continuing on with our hadith of ahkam. We finished the chapter of Babul Imama, talking about the Imam and the congregational prayer. The author then moves on the hadith of ahkam to Babul Sifati Salat al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the chapter that gives descriptions of the prayer of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we'll see some hadith that give some important descriptions of the prayer. And also, again, the point of what we're going through is also to understand the insight into how rulings are formed, right? How the fuqaha come to their rulings. So the next hadith, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا كبر في الصلاة سكت هريها قبل أن يقرأ فقلت يا رسول الله بأبي أنت وأمي أرأيت سكوتك بين التكبير والقراءة ما تقول؟ قال أقول اللهم باعد بيني وبين خطاياي كما باعدت بين المشرق والمغرب اللهم نقني من خطاياي كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس اللهم اغسلني من خطاياي بالماء والثلج والبرد. The Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he mentions that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he would make the takbir for the salah, and in between that and his recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha, there would be a period of silence. So he said sakata, that there was a small period of silence. And what he means by the silence here is he's going to ask him what he's saying. So this is one of the things when we talk about, when we're talking about deriving rulings, right? It's very hard to be sometimes too literal with the text of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sakata means to be quiet. But what he's referencing here is that there's a period of whispering or silence. It's obvious he's saying something, but he can't hear what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying. Which is why we don't always go by the literal word, because if he's not saying anything, then why is he asking if he's saying something? This is just a small point that we mentioned here as well. But he asked him, what is it that you say when you're quiet? You say takbir out loud and you say Fatiha, so what are you saying in between? So he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a dua, which is one of the du'as that is narrated for opening the prayer. The one we know, subhanakallah wa bihamdik wa tabarak ismuk wa ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk. That is the more popular one and is the easiest one, shortest, right? Very fast, very quick. But there are multiple ones that are narrated, and in this one, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions one, Allahumma ba'id bayni wa bayna khataayaya, O Allah, put distance between me and my sins like the east and the west, right? The reference here is what? Make me far away from sin. Yeah, it's not saying that, just put me here on the one side, but put me, and between me and my sins, a huge distance, meaning take me away from sins. Allahumma naqqini min khataayaya, Allah, purify me from sins as a white garment is purified from stain, right? So this is another dua of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to be purified of sins. And oh Allah, wash me of my sins and my mistakes with water and snow and ice. And this is a popular dua of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We've explained it elsewhere as well. Khataya, the word khati'ah, which is one of the words used for sins, is an intentional sin. An intentional sin. So meaning you've done something wrong, you know it was wrong, and you did it anyways. That is what's called a khati'ah. And just to mention really quickly with regards to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam making a dua, asking Allah to forgive him of sins that are intentionally done? And again, we know that some of the things, they don't apply to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he does them, number one, in order to emphasize certain things, and number two, in order to establish a sunnah for us to follow, right? A sunnah for us to follow, just like he would do istighfar and tawbah 100 times a day. But he is not someone that is, Allah Azza wa Jal protects him from sins. That's a side point in this as well. And this is a dua, the opening dua. The ruling of the opening dua in salah is that it is a sunnah, it is optional, it is preferred, it is a good thing to do, but it is not mandatory. And we understand it is not mandatory by the structure of this hadith. That if something was mandatory, the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't keep it quiet to himself. He would tell them, when he's teaching them the prayer, you have to do this. But how do we know it's not mandatory? Because Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu sees the Prophet ﷺ doing something that he hasn't explained. And then he asks him, what is it that you're doing in this in this time? What are you actually saying? And he mentions to him what he's actually saying. If it was mandatory, it would be mandatory on the Prophet ﷺ to explain it, that this is what you're supposed to do, you have to do this. But this is how Allah Azza wa Jal explains the Sharia through the Prophet ﷺ. Right, that he has the Sahaba witness something, they ask questions, the Prophet ﷺ gives an answer, and based on the interaction and the structure of what's going on, we deduce whether it's wajib, it's mandatory, or it's sunnah, it's optional, etc., so on and so forth. The next hadith we'll do next week, you'll see that there's even difference of opinion about the interpretation of whether it's obligatory or sunnah or not. But the opening prayer of the salah, again, it's not mandatory. If you skipped it for some reason, your salah is still valid. You don't have to go back and do anything, or there's no penalty to pay for. But again, there are also multiple du'as that are narrated. You can look up in your du'a app or du'a book, for prayer for opening the salah, and you will see multiple ones that are there as well. And it's good to use the different ones because the Prophet ﷺ would switch out and not always use the same one, especially throughout his entire life. So if we've never learned another one in our life, we can at least learn another one, and this is a short one as well. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to accept. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.